Peppa builds epic cushion den, cozy winter fort, Peppa Pig full episodes, 2 hours of cartoons. It was the coldest weekend of the year, snow dusting the city with a soft, relentless hush. On the outer edge of a sprawling, lived-in flat sat Peppa, known among her friends as the reigning queen of impromptu get-togethers. She'd always had a knack for finding delight in the gloomy, and on this particular Saturday, meteorologists declared a record-breaking winter chill. But for Peppa, the threats of icy roads and cancelled brunch plans offered only opportunity. She stood in the middle of her living room, hands on her hips, surveying the battlefield, scattered cushions, throws pilfered from each room, a stack of takeout menus, and a group chat bubbling with replies. The group had all braved the early afternoon cold. Rob, ever the cynic but first to RSVP. Suze, who came armed with her emergency hot water bottle. Lynn, who was in it solely for the promise of endless snacks. And Freddie, who lived 2 floors up and had, unsurprisingly, shown up in slippers. Okay, Peppa declared, driving the mood with one encouraging sweep of her arms. Today we build the cushion den. This wasn't a childhood whimsy but something elevated, grown from nostalgia, fueled by adulthood's need for sanctuary. Emails could wait. Deadlines were forsaken. The next 2 hours, at least, belonged to the project. They began with the scavenger hunt, Peppa assigning roles like a general marshalling her troops. Rob was on cushion detail. Suze commandeered blankets and throws. Even the ugly one's coziness trumps aesthetics was the new law. Lynn scouted the kitchen for snacks, prioritizing finger food. And Freddie, naturally, was tasked with lighting and ambience. Fortification began at the back wall, using the sturdy, rarely moved-in Days backpack as an anchor. The couch's sectional pieces were shifted, rearranged, stacked with mathematical precision. Pillows became insulation. Heavy throws were tented, clipped at curtain rods with makeshift fasteners, hair ties, binder clips, and optimistic safety pins sourced from the depths of Peppa's junk drawer. Rob, kneeling amid the build, grunted as he tried to wedge the coffee table into place as a support column. Why does every adult-themed gathering devolve into structural engineering? Because, Peppa laughed, the best architecture is built on the promise of snacks and good company. Lynn returned from the kitchen, arms draped in bags of chips and boxes of cookies. Do we have a snack portal? So nobody destabilizes the whole thing during a cheese run? Peppa nodded. Of course. Multidisciplinary thinking, Lynn. That's why you're on the team. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, the den began to take shape. Interior darkness, broken by fairy lights, snaked and nestled along the ceiling, casting stars on every soft, pillowy arch. They debated the merits of fort windows, pro, airflow, con, heat loss, and, after mild squabbling, compromised on a single window, flanked with scarves. Freddie unearthed a plug-in heater, placing it so heat would flow into, but not melt, the carefully constructed fortress. An hour later, construction was complete. They stepped back, surveying the grand final product, an edifice of comfort. Floor space padded in layers of duvets. The walls high, the ceiling sprawling above them, lit with a warm, twinkle-lit glow. There was even a spot for Peppa's enormous beanbag, unofficially dubbed the throne. They crawled in, bringing with them trays of snacks, mugs of steaming cocoa and tea, and the ultimate victory, Rob's laptop, loaded with an artfully curated marathon of winter-perfect films and ambient playlists. None of them had watched cartoons in years, but in this space, nostalgia and adulthood clattered together, giving permission to indulge in every cozy cliché. For 2 hours, time slowed. No one checked work emails. No one braved the blast of winter from outside. They watched films, each one a layer of comfort atop the next. Peppa, sprawled under 2 blankets and happily sandwiched between her best friends, felt a sense of achievement, distinctly adult. They were no longer children. There was no bedtime to begrudge, no parents to interrupt. The den meant freedom by design, crafted with deliberate intent to reclaim simple joys. Suze, between sips of cocoa, glanced around and declared, "We should all start a business. Custom dens for cold nights. People would book this." Freddie was skeptical. "Think we get sued the moment someone trips over a pillow?" Rob countered, "Not if they sign a waiver. Or if you include a portable cheese portal." Their laughter echoed, bouncing off the soft walls, warming every inch. Lynn, ever practical, finalized the evening snack tray negotiations, popcorn for cookies, tea for a turn with the throne. By now, the wind had picked up outside, rattling the windows in irregular huffs. Inside, Peppa adjusted a blanket over Susie's legs and turned to the group. "Who votes for making this a tradition?" Hands shot up. Even Rob's. As evening slid in, the city outside grew darker and colder. But in the den, warmth radiated not just from the heater or the pile of people and cushions, but from a kind of camaraderie forged more tightly than any stitched blanket edge. Freddie thumbed through a playlist and landed on a playlist of jazzy winter classics, filling the den with soft, familiar music. Conversation ebbed and flowed, memories of past winters, dreams for spring, the best methods of insulating drafty windows. There was, during those hours, a complete lack of grown-up anxieties. No one brought up meetings. No one worried aloud about their to-do lists. The everyday lives of working adults full of obligation and deadlines fell away in the simple act of being present. Outside, snow continued to drift, thickening the blanket over city streets. Traffic faded to a gentle hush. The wind, for all its best efforts, could not breach the forced coziness. A few at a time, eyelids began to droop, conversation quieted, there were yawns and lazy stretching. Lynn, never missing a beat, draped another throw over the group, tucking everyone in a little more firmly. Peppa caught Rob's eye, both stifling laughter at the sight of Suze asleep, hot water bottle gripped triumphantly, and Freddie lightly snoring, half buried in the beanbag throne. They stayed like that, letting the chill and bustle of the world outside pass them by. Just before midnight, as the ambient music faded and the snow settled, Peppa crawled out of the den just far enough to peek through the curtains. The outside world remained as intense and uninviting as it had been all day. She was glad, for once, to be snowed in. When eventually the time came to call it a night, nobody rushed to dismantle the den. They left it standing, a monument to ingenuity and thriving adulthood play, a reminder that sometimes the best antidote to winter's bite is a fortress of comfort, snacks, and friends. The next morning, with coffee in hand and hair askew, Peppa snapped a photo of the den and sent it to the inevitably silent group chat. "Survived the storm. Fort status. Epic. Let's do it again next snow day." There were no immediate replies. It was very early. But Peppa knew, as sure as the chill outside and the warmth within, that the den would become their winter tradition, built stronger each time by the hands of those who always showed up.